Hey, this is Tara Westwood, and you are listening to Two Mics Up.
Below seven.
Buddy, it's your man Dame D NYDC. Two Mics Up Monday night, season 6, Mogul TV Global Network. Ooh, man, what do I say about tonight's guest joining me on the mic? Man, this woman has done so much in the entertainment industry, from acting, directing, producing. You've seen her in movies such as Plane, Fleischman's in Trouble. I mean, I could just go on and on and on and on. But I have to admit, just having spent some time, behind scenes, is when you really get to really see a person's personality. The essence of who they are just really bubbles over and really shines through. And I know if you guys are like me, you're really going to enjoy tonight's guest. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop bragging and dragging and teasing. I'm going to bring to the other mic the incredible Tara Westwood. Tara, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm grateful.
Oh, we are really pleased as pie, as they would say. And I just really want to jump in. Like, I have to ask before we get into your incredible history and the work that you're continuing to do in the entertainment industry. What does Tara Westwood really like to do when she's not acting or when she's not directing? Just sitting back, just kicking it, with the family at home.
Yeah, well, you just nailed it right there. My family and my friends and my loved ones. Included in that is my son's dog. My whole, my family. That's what I love to do. So that's number one. But I love to camp and hike and surf. And this year I decided to cross country ski instead of downhill skiing because we just had the strike for 10 months. And my
Right.
manager was like, are you skiing this year or working? Because the last time I went downhill skiing, I ruptured my ACL. So I was like, fair enough.
Oh.
I will not downhill ski this year. But I do, yeah, I like to be really active and I like to be with my family. So yeah.
I love that. And to give a little further background history, so you're originally from Canada, Manitoba, if I'm correct.
That's
But
correct. Yeah, I
you
actually spent a lot of money to get rid of the accent, because I used to sound like this. My whole family kind of sounds like they're from Fargo. I shouldn't even do it because it comes back like that. But that's how I used to sound.
Really, I love it. And
Yeah.
so, what has it been like? As we, reading, about you and your background, you're kind of a New York City transplant now. And what has that been like? Just that coming from a place like Manitoba, and then the big
Yeah.
lights and big city of New York. What has that been like, and what was that change like for you? Was it like culture shock at first, or was it just like you just kind of fit right in?
Well, this is definitely home now. I've lived here longer than I lived in Canada, but
Okay.
the progress was Winnipeg, not even Winnipeg proper. I lived in St. Andrews, Manitoba, which, farm country. And then I moved to Toronto, and then I moved to Paris for a few years, and then I came to New York. So I think doing one step up each time was a huge help, because it would have been completely overwhelming to just show up in New York. Because
Right.
literally, like, my big outing was Fargo. No
You're
offense to
right.
Fargo, but it's a big difference to New York. So yeah, it was it was a lot to take in. And I remember the first time, my first Saturday here, I called my grandmother that morning, and she's like, what'd you do this morning? And I said, well, I went to Central Park and I ran, and I saw JF Kennedy Jr. running on the bridle path.
Wow.
And she was like, well, A, is he really good looking like I think he is? And I was like, he is. And she's like, B, you can't go to Central Park. People get killed there. And I was like, that's not what it is. But like back home, that's
Yes,
what,
it is right.
that's what people thought Central Park was. Yeah,
Wow.
I love New York. It's changed a little bit, like many places over the years, and
Yeah.
especially since what happened in 2020. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. This is home.
Yeah. I being originally from New York myself, I miss it sometimes, but I don't miss it. You grow and you change, and you know, but it's home for me. And I love it. And I, like I said, I have fond memories. But I
Where
want
do
to
you live?
change. So I actually grew up on Long Island. I
Okay.
actually grew up on Long Island. I grew up in a small town, Roosevelt, Long Island.
Yep.
small, one by one. That's where, Howard Stern, Eddie Murphy, Dr. J, all of these folks. I mean, I loved it. I mean, it was close enough to the city, but
Yeah,
far
yeah.
enough
Well,
away.
it's
And I mean,
perfect.
I
Where do you
loved it.
live now?
So now I'm in the Washington D.C. area. I'm in a little, well, I wouldn't say little. I'm in Northern Virginia. Same thing. It's kind of like being on Long Island. I'm about
Yeah,
20 minutes from downtown DC. I work in the city, but I'm far enough away. I have my privacy. I got my yard. I got my peace, my quiet. So, I kind of just emulated what I grew up with in
yeah,
New York. Yeah. So, I mean, but I love it. I'm an East Coast guy. I mean, I've been blessed to travel. I've seen the world. There's a couple of places that I would love to retire, like Costa Rica or St. Thomas are kind of like my two favorite places in the world. But I mean, I've been blessed to travel and see and enjoy life. Uh,
that's
but this is not
great.
about me. This is not about me anyway. So I want to change lanes. About your acting journey, right? What was it that maybe inspired you, if you will, to actually want to pursue a career in the entertainment industry?
Well, I mean, if I really look back, my dad is unfortunately no longer with us, but my dad, I didn't even realize how much he loved film until he was
Hmm.
gone and I was starting to get into it more. And I realized, oh my gosh, I saw so many movies with my pop when I was growing up. And
Wow.
it wasn't like he was like, I love movies. We would just sit down and watch movies. And yeah, so I think that that's where it started. And I remember the first time I saw Kramer versus Kramer, I was really
Wow.
young
Yeah.
and I went back to my bedroom and I couldn't stop crying because it's TMI for this, but my birth mother left when I was very young. So
Wow.
I
Mm.
Kramer versus Kramer to watch that film as a little girl
Yeah.
whose mom had left. I just went to my room and I
Yeah.
couldn't stop crying. And then I started doing what I didn't know was little monologues. I would, for
Yeah.
after that movie, I literally just started, I'm like, wait a minute. I want to do something with how I'm feeling right now. And I didn't realize I was
Right.
working on monologues for like the next year after that.
Wow.
And I was so young. But then
Wow.
when I moved to New York, a friend of mine had been to the William Esper studio and studied with a teacher named Maggie Flanagan, who I love so much. And he
Okay.
said, I think you should, do the summer program and see if you like it. And then I did. It was just a couple month program and I was bitten. So I started doing the 2-year program, but then I actually got married and then I got pregnant and I
Oh,
had my
wow.
first son and I moved to Idaho for 4 years and I got completely
Wow.
out of the business. And then I moved back to New York to go back to school. So it was kind of like an in and out
And out.
process.
Wow. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, that, go
No, I was
ahead.
gonna say if you look at my IMDb page, I shot an episode of Law and Order SVU and it was really funny because one of the actors came up to me and said, so I just checked you out on IMDb and it's a little weird. Like you work and then you don't work for 2 years. You work and then you don't work for 2 years. And I was like, I ended up being a single mom and I was class mom in my kids' classes and my focus were my
Wow.
boys. So I couldn't travel for work and I couldn't, I hung around at the Maggie Flanagan studio a lot and I just kept
Right.
taking classes so that I could keep going. And then
Mhm.
that's why, suddenly I'm working more. And it's because my kids grew up and moved out. So I was like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I can do this now.
Is it like most moms? And I think this is the part that I think I like when we have celebrities and you're a human being, you're a regular person just like we are. And that's the part sometimes we see the glitz, the glamour, but that's the backstory. You really had to put your career on pause, if you will. Like you said, to be a mom, a full-time mom, and invest in your kids. And now that they're grown, now you're starting to be able to kind of be able to create and do more and see more fruits of your labor, if you will, right? And
Yeah.
was that something that you maybe at first thought, this is how it would turn out? And if not, are you happy though that it actually turned out this way for you?
Well, when you speak of fruits of my labor, the biggest blessing are my sons.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
having had that time with them, I would not, they're older now. And once in a while, they'll say to me something that kind of crushes me. They're like, Mama, you're doing so well. Imagine if you had focused on work. You could have been even
Wow.
been doing more. And I'm sorry that you were
Wow.
home. And I'm like, don't
Don't.
be
Yeah.
sorry. That was my
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change that for anything.
Wow.
Um, and now I just feel very fortunate that that women are working after the age of 40. Because I remember seeing Meryl freaking Streep say, "Oh, women don't work after 40," and I was like, "Wait, what?"
Right, right.
And they
That's so
do,
true.
they do.
That is so awesome. I mean, and kudos to your boys, for just recognizing, that love and really realizing the work that you actually poured into them. So kudos to them. Um, I'm curious too, though, like now that you have the freedom, but there still has to be, an approach, I guess, if you will, right?
Yeah.
When you're working on characters. So for you, Tara, what is it like when you maybe, you approach a character? What techniques do you use in preparation for helping bring that character to life for us as the audience when we see it on screen?
Well, I am technically Meisner trained. So,
Okay.
I mean, as actual technique goes, that's what my technique is. But I definitely don't feel that I'm just that.
Hmm.
I've studied the Alexander technique. I've done other things, and I read a script. I read it. I don't like to read it unless I can actually sit down and read it from top to bottom once. And then my process is I like to get off book before I really, really start making choices, because I don't feel that I, as an
Mm,
actor, can have freedom to decide what's really happening in a scene unless I know my words. If I don't know my script, then I'm stuck. So my
right.
main thing is I have a few people that help me get off book, because I get off book a lot easier, and getting off book means learning your script. I get off book a
Yeah.
lot easier when I'm being repetitive with someone and saying it aloud. And
Mm,
then, definitely every part I've ever had has a big part of me in it, obviously, which is why every
wow.
actor
Right.
brings something else to it. So, like I remember in The Grudge, there's a scene that didn't make it to the film, but it's on the DVD or it's
Hmm.
on YouTube if someone wants to watch the deleted scenes from The Grudge 2020.
Okay.
There's a scene where I'm drowning, my character's drowning my daughter, and I was like, how am I gonna
I remember
emotionally
that.
get to where this is the right thing to do?
Right.
And as an actor, you have to justify everything your character does, like
Hmm.
no matter how good or horrific it is, you have to justify why they're doing it.
Right.
And the director and I spoke about it, and the only way that I could justify why my character would do that was my character, really thought that it was in my daughter's best interest, that she was in such a
Mm,
horrific place, that I was
mm,
doing it because of my love for her. So that's
gotcha.
why when you see what's happening in that scene, that's coming from a loving mother of all
Wow.
places. And then I sing her a little song. I asked him, he said, sing a song. So I sang a little song, and he came in afterwards. Nick Pash, he's such a good director. And he was like, wait, whose song is that? Because it's the rights, do you have the rights to the song? And
Right.
I'm like, no, there's a version of that I sang to my boys every night before bed. We're good. But
Wow.
that's what it is. You just have to be able to kind of uh, justify everything you're
Right.
doing one way or another.
Mm. I mean, I'm sitting here just thinking about it. I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about it because watching you and looking at you describe that, like, there's a real unique, I guess, interpretation. Like, you really had to dive deep, and to get that really unique interpretation and to hear you speak on it. Um, I can only imagine what it's like mentally, uh, for you, like the work that you had to put in mentally to really bring, just like you said, that whole thing just came to life while you were talking. And I have to imagine then, like for each character, like say, in the grudge you're playing, is this the same type of, I guess, mental interpretation that you have to go through to really help show that character's essence, I guess, if
Mm.
you will, for us, the audience, to make it believable, and how taxing really is that on you? Because I would imagine after a while, like sometimes you do take some of that up home because it is still you,
Oh yeah.
So I see you look up, like, what is that like for you?
Well, I mean, especially in that film, in that movie, I was killing a lot of people and I was hurting a lot of people. It was just crazy. And even though that looks like it would be nothing, I tried to make sure I was in that emotional mindset to do it. And it is because your body, if you, for example, when I was on a show, FBI, and when my daughter was missing, it was take after take after take, my coverage, and then the actor's coverage and the actress's coverage of me just like crying the whole time and being so upset the whole time.
Hmm.
And I remember one of the makeup artists came up to me, the assistants, and she had this little thing in her hand, and I was like, wait, what is that? And she's like, oh, it's because some actors use like a little menthol thing to put in your eye that
Yeah.
causes you to
To
cry.
cry.
And I
Yep.
was like, wait, what's that? And she said, no. She said, oh, wait, you've been crying this whole time? And I said, she's like, you're really crying? And I'm like, yeah, I don't want that. I think that's going to mess up my eye. And she was
Wow.
like, what dark place are you going to? And the reality is I did. Like, you go to a dark place. And the funny thing is, like, your
Wow.
body doesn't know if if Tara's crying or the actor's crying. So your
Right.
body at the end of it, you are kind of wiped out. And my kids will joke about it. You know,
Right.
I would come home from work and they'd be like, which one of us died today in your head? And
Wow. Wow. Wow.
but they
Yeah.
know that if I have to go there, that's kind of where you go places that you don't
Ooh,
want to go, but that's what you do. Or at least
that's
that's
what
what I
you.
do.
Hey, well, I appreciate you sharing because, like I said, we get the end result. But I think it's always good to find out. This is your job, and it's like anything. Police officer, fireman, whoever. There are days I'm pretty sure you compartmentalize some of the things that you've had to do for the day, and it
Well,
stays
except
with you. So
their jobs are really important. You just
no, they're
mentioned
really
two.
important.
And then I'm just an actor. So those are very important. We've got police officers, firemen, and then actors way down there.
Well, wait, so we'll make sure we put it in the proper order. We'll make sure we do that.
There's
I
a big
love
old
it.
gap.
I love it, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a short pause for the cause. We're having a great time with the incredible Tara Westwood. Stay tuned after we come back on the other side of the break. We're going to talk about her film Triggered, and we're going to really get into that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this short pause for the cause. Ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're fresh out the break. The incredible Tara Westwood. We talked about Tara getting to know her in the first half, and if I don't know how you got to this point, you missed that. You need to go back. Tara's a baller lass. She's hilarious and super fun. But now we're going to switch and transition. We're going to talk about her film Triggered. Now, give us a little background, Tara, if you would, about what the short film is all about, and really what inspired you to direct this project, and what message do you want to send, to our community at large, with the filming project.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that. So Triggered was a one-act play that I did here in New York City. Amy Schumer's theater company put it on. And so that was my first introduction to Triggered. Thomas C. Dunn had written this wonderful one act, and then the theater company asked me to be a part of it. And I was just as an actor, and I was so grateful for that. Long story short, I reached out to Thomas afterwards and I asked him if he would consider making it a screenplay. And he already had, and someone had gotten the rights for it. And then they were supposed to film during COVID, and because of COVID, they didn't. So the rights lapsed, and I got the rights. And I knew that I wanted to produce it because I wanted to cast myself. That's normally why I produce things, so that I can make sure I can work as an actor. And I went for lunch with a dear friend of mine, Marie-Therese Gerges, and I said, this is who I want in the cast, which was different than the play. I was bringing in, friends that I knew. This is who I want in the cast. The amazing Newton brothers have agreed to be a part of it. I know Ed Lucas is going to be my cinematographer. I've got the editor. I was so excited about this, everything I had set up. And she said, who's directing it? And I said, oh, well, John Leguizamo's a friend of mine. And I think I'm going to ask John because
Wow.
I know that gun
Wow.
violence, which is what the film is about, is something that
Mhm.
John cares about. And because people love him, he could get the funding, and he's a really good director,
Yeah.
but he doesn't direct a lot. So it would be, if I asked an actor that doesn't direct that much, then maybe they'll say yes. And she
Wow.
said, you need to listen to me. You have your cast, your crew, your location, your editor. You have everything. That's called directing. She was like, you need to direct this. and asked
Wow.
John to come on as EP. And it literally had never occurred to me that what I was doing is I was trying to just make things easy to
Easy.
propose this to
Yeah.
John, because I just thought I'll just do everything. And she was like, you can't,
Right.
like, a director's going to want their own cinematographer. They're going to want their own cast. Like, she's like, that's literally directing. So I directed it, and it's a film about, I mean, I'll say gun violence, but we're actually making it into a feature, and I would no longer say that the feature is about gun violence. It's kind of a
Right.
dramatic thriller that has the same threads of it.
Look of it. Yeah.
But to focus on the short right now, you know, my history is that I grew up in a farm in Canada, and we had guns, and everyone there
Right.
had guns. We
Right.
had guns, and if I'm going to be honest, and some people don't like it when I say this because they think since I made a short film about gun violence that I am anti-Second Amendment, and I'm not. I support the Second Amendment. I'm actually a really good shot. And I think that this country needs to, at the same time, change some laws to save
Mm.
lives, because
Mm-hmm.
it is an epidemic, the gun violence in this country. And I think that we are so divided
It
as a
is.
country here and here. And if we don't start coming
Yep.
together and everyone talking on so many levels, we're going to be in
Right.
trouble. So, you know, I don't want to take away all guns, but there are small change. You know, 90% of Americans, including NRA members, believe in a better background check. So that's a
Right.
simple thing that could
Yep.
happen, that could save some lives. And I'll, you know, get into a conversation with someone and they're like, yeah, but how many lives? I mean, how many lives is that going to change? And I'm like, if you had lost a child to gun violence, would you had wished that that was the one life that got
That's right.
saved?
That one life. That one
Yeah.
life. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's how the whole thing came about. I was so bewildered, having grown up around guns, to see the epidemic of gun violence here. And I just wanted to start a conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I made Triggered. And that's why we're going to make Triggered a feature, which I'm excited to
I
say
love it.
Thomas is writing right now. And a fantastic producer, Oren Moverman, has come on as producer.
Wow. I love that. You know, I agree. We can agree to disagree, whatever side that you're on. But I do agree that there are certain things within that conversation that we can agree on that needs to be changed. That can
Right.
help, like you said, because at the end of the day, and you know, as Americans, it doesn't really affect you until something happens to you. Then all
Right.
of a sudden, there's an outcry, and I think we shouldn't be reactionary to things. We should be proactive, so that
Mm,
you don't have to react to something when it happens to you.
right.
And I appreciate you for sharing, you know, being open and candid, but to actually for using this film as a measure for conversation.
Mm,
And I think that's really important, you know, across no matter where you are in society, whatever your culture is, whatever we're here in America as Americans, we need to really figure out a way to really curb this violence that is rampant in our country. So I thank
right.
you for that. And whenever you want to come back and talk about film, whenever you are more than welcome to come back. And when you actually hit the big screens, you're more than welcome to come back. We'd love to dive in solely just on the film and everything about the film, give it its full conversation whenever you're ready. Okay.
That means so much to me. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm
Pleasure.
excited to I'm excited to have this be the first feature I direct. I'm not actually going to be in it because I
Mhm.
just need to focus on this side. Yeah, I'm really thrilled. I'm excited. So thank you.
Yes, definitely. So I want to ask then, because it just makes me think, you know, with Triggered and Plane and Grudge and, you know, all of the works, you know, theater and all the things that you've, you know, been able to grace us with your presence. Um, are there any memorable experiences or stories that maybe, you know, or lessons that you've learned while working on a set or stage production that, you know, you can share or tell with? I see you smiling, so it has to be one or two that you can share or
Yeah.
talk about, because I think that's always good to get a funny story, you know, out of
Yeah.
all of the hard work that you do.
Well, I mean, there are so many. I've been so blessed to work with such great actors. You know, if you look at Triggered, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. is just such a good actor, and Caitlin Maynor and Bobby Burke. You know, I those were three people to be able to do that film with, which is such an emotionally driven film. And I just want to be clear, Triggered is an 18-minute film, and we shot 14-minute takes, which no one does. Like, once we're in,
Wow.
so it's a film about these two characters. I play a senator, and my husband, our home gets broken into in the middle of the night by two people who want to have a little talk with me because I'm a senator and I have either passed or not passed laws that they feel should be passed is what I'll say about it. And
Right.
they, it was a very emotionally driven film. So to be able to work with them was just so beautiful. And Isaiah, who's a dear friend, doesn't typically get cast in that kind of role, and to just see his heart open up, like I don't know how that man's heart fits into his body, because it's just so big, and it was really beautiful. So that was just such a special thing for me, since that was the first time I directed, to have those great actors say yes. I just felt so, so grateful. But a fun little story was on plane. We were shooting in Puerto Rico, and my scenes are with Tony Goldwyn and Paul Van Victor, and I, was in most of the scenes of whatever they're in, but my character actually didn't have a name. I was, I forget what I think just like the executive or something. That's what I had. And every actor, if you are a writer out there right now, give us a name. We want a name on that IMDb page. We don't want to be the executive. We want to have a name. So we were shooting, and Tony Goldwyn, who's a gem of a human being, people know him from, he played the president in that Shonda Land show. What was a great show? How can I not think of the name of the show?
I know exactly. So I know who you're talking about, and I know exactly what you're saying.
He actually has a beautiful movie coming out called Ezra soon that he directed. But anyway, we know what he's talking about, the one with Kerry Washington. Right. So we were sitting there in between takes, and he said, wait, what's your character's name in this? And I said, oh, I don't have one. And he's like, what do you mean you don't have one? I'm like, I don't have one. And he was like, that's not right. You're with us in all these scenes. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, no, it's not right. And he leans over and he goes, what would you want your character to be? And I was like, wow. Oh, and I'm thinking, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want the director or producer to, think that I insisted on having a name. And I was like, well, and my dad's, everyone called him Terry, but his birth name was Sydney. And I think that that's a name that can go either way, male or female. And had I had a daughter, I wanted to call her
male, female.
So I said to Tony, I said, I want my name to be Sydney. So his next take, he walks in the room. He's like, Sydney, where are we at? What's going on with the plane? And I have to respond as the character, but my inner self, I'm like,
you're screaming.
Oh my gosh, she just gave me a name. And then when we finished that take, one of the producers came up and just said, what did he just call you? And I was like, it's not my fault. And I was like, right. He asked me, and he was like, no, I don't care. It's fine. But what do you want your name to be? And I was like, Sydney. He's like, okay, from now on, her character's name is Sydney. I was like, what? So I was so excited. So, and then Paul Van Victor kicked in later and called me Sydney. So it was Sydney, but now unfortunately on IMDb it actually says the executive. But I just love that I'm working with these two actors, and they were like, it's fine. And then the producer was like, it's fine. He was like, I don't have to get the rights to that name. Like, if I learned something that day, because he said that had I wanted the last name in there, then there's a thing where they have to Google to make sure, is that person, does that name exist? Have they been in trouble? Have they done, like, you have to kind of like legally, when you're picking a full name for a character, you gotta search stuff. But he was like, the fact you just want to be called Sydney, that's good. And I was like, okay, cool.
I love it. Man, look, ladies and gentlemen, time flies when you're having fun. We are coming to the close of this amazing conversation with Tara Westwood. Tara, before we close out, I want to allow you to please, any social media or anything that you would like to share. I want to get our audience here. Make sure you guys follow, support, get behind her projects. Anything you want to share before we close out, Tara?
I'm horrible with social media, but it's Tara_Westwood on Instagram. And I look like I'm this I just, social media is so icky, because all I do is post about myself, and that's not me, but I have to, because it's work. And, I just look like I'm such a narcissist on there. But anyway, I hate social media, but I have to do it. So that's that. And then Facebook is just my name. And I honestly don't remember for Instagram, because I never go on, but it's there.
Well, don't worry about it. We'll make sure we put all of that information down in the show notes. We'll put triggered and everything, the information that we received, we'll put that in the show notes. So, ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Tara Westwood. Tara, thank you so much for joining us today.
What a joy. Thank you to you and your wife.
Conversation, y'all. Thank you so much. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another shot in the dark here, episode of Two Mics Up. I'm your man, Damon Cunningham, a.k.a. Dame D NYDC, host of Two Mics Up. You can follow Two Mics Up across all social media, IG, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, make sure you go ahead, you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit the bell before you leave so you can be notified about all the newest content coming to you from me here at Two Mics Up. And as we close out today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you with 3 things like we always do at the close of each and every show. May you stay safe, stay blessed. Mike's out.
007.